Welcome to Wrap It Up. How can I help you make your holidays magical today? Her enthusiasm was almost aggressive, like she snorted candy canes before her shift. The entire space looked like Martha Stewart and Pottery Barn had a baby and then bedazzled it.
See,
That was good.
that's what I loved about the book.
Welcome to Morally Gray Babes. We're your hosts, Jen and Amber, two unapologetic book addicts diving deep into the steamiest dreams, hottest book boyfriends, and those spicy moments that make you blush.
Amber here, and we're not just here to talk plot twists and character arcs. We're breaking down everything from our favorite quotes to the spice levels that really bring the heat.
Expect a lot of laughs, a little cussing, and some seriously hot takes. Whether we're gushing over fictional men or dishing out the truth on what books deserve the hype, nothing is off limits.
So buckle up, Buttercup, and get ready for real, raw, and totally unfiltered book talk. Because we're the book besties you didn't know you needed.
Hello, Amber.
Hello, Jen. And hello, fellow Morally Gray Babes. Today we're going to be diving into the book Wrapped Up by the Three Scrooges, and this was written by Layla Hartley. It's a holiday romantic comedy, and it's all about starting over, found family, workplace vibes in a Hallmark-esque setting that's a reverse harem. I'm like, that's all I got. So
You were saying it, and in my head, I'm all, where's the reverse
it's at
harem
the
piece?
end.
Because
It's at the end. So, but it's all about, yeah. How about before I start getting into that, you tell the blurb. For me, I didn't really think
yeah,
there was any triggers for this. There was no mention of triggers. The only thing would be cheating. Obviously, there was some cheating done, but it was not done by the main characters. And then maybe a sense of family abandonment.
yes.
That was a pretty big theme for some of the main characters. So those possibly could be triggers. It wasn't really harped on. It was just
True.
kind of glazed over. But the cheating of the cheating of a partner was definitely the opener in this book. So, how
Yes.
about you go through the
Yes.
blurb and then I will talk about our book boyfriends.
Sounds awesome. So, finding out my boyfriend is stuffing someone else's turkey isn't the greatest way to start out the holidays, especially when he signs my paychecks and I live with him. So, with no other choice but to move out and quit my job, I am forced to exist on ramen and stay in a cheap motel while I figure out my life. Just when it starts looking like Santa did not read my letters, I land a seasonal job at Wrap It Up, where the holiday spirit is sorely lacking. It's easy to see why when the three owners are known as the Three Scrooges. Hot, rich, and grumpy will only get them coal in their stockings unless they can turn staff morale around. But when they help me spread more cheer than just Christmas cheer, I'm left with wondering if getting wrapped up by them will be the gift that keeps on giving or the biggest holiday disaster of my life.
Yes. So if you didn't know, Wrapped Up with the Three Scrooges is a spicy romantic comedy where she doesn't have to choose. It's full of sugar and spice, and it is intended for mature readers. Let's just,
Yes.
if we didn't make that clear. So the three book boyfriends in this book were the stoic leader, Ronan. He's a man of few words. He exudes authority and control. He's disciplined nature, hides a deep well of passion and protectiveness. He has this intense gaze that speaks volumes, often conveying what words cannot. So that's Ronan. Then you have Levi, the charismatic charmer, quick wit, devilish grin. He brings lightness to any situation. His playful demeanor makes a fiercely loyal heart. He's always ready to defend those he cares about. He's got this like flirtatious banter that keeps our female main character, Emery, on her toes and adds a little bit of spark to their interactions. The third and like not least by any means is Max. He's the brooding intellectual. He's deep and contemplative. He often retreats into his thoughts. He's got this like mysterious aura that intrigues Emery, drawing her into his world. But behind his serious exterior lies a man yearning for connection and understanding. So, those are our book boyfriends, Ronan, Levi, and Max.
And you said that beautifully. I mean, I could picture them and like what they said and how they acted throughout the book. It was
Thank you
perfection.
so much. Now, moving on, we're going to talk about dedication, which there was
Boo!
none. There was no dedication.
Boo hiss.
There was no dedication to this holiday romance. And nicknames, Jen, I know it was one of your favorites. What was what was the nickname for this?
I'm sorry, but Christmas spirit is possibly the dumbest nickname I've heard in any of the books I read this year. I'll just say that.
It was a little cringeworthy. And I understood why they nicknamed her Christmas Spirit. Like you can sense it. But there's so many good Christmas nicknames out there, right? Even if he called her Candy Cane, like I feel like that would have done better. But Christmas Spirit.
Anything would have been better.
Well, they were the Three Scrooges. That was their nickname that was kind of going around. And she burst into this
Well
well
earned.
earned.
It was well earned, by the
Yes.
way.
Anyway, well earned. And she burst into this place of business and she's like, I don't know, vomiting up tinsel and snow like paper cutouts of snowflakes and glitter galore. So I can see where they were like Christmas spirit because she was like that was her thing. I will say that I don't think this is like a nickname that can be given year round, right? Like, is she still gonna be Christmas spirit like in July or in August?
I mean, it's not sexy, and I like sexy nicknames or endearing nicknames.
Yes.
But this was
And I get it was a holiday book, but
like a children's book
yeah, but it was
nickname.
just I don't know. When I think of the Christmas spirit, I think of Tiny Tim. And like I don't want to think about like
Or big old jolly Saint Nick, like not
I
yeah.
don't know. It was just off-putting. But anyway, let's talk about what we did love about this book. So for me, I feel like it was just as it promised. It's a spicy Hallmark-esque holiday read where the girl doesn't have to choose, right? Check. I did love the banter and I love the descriptions the author gave, either in the setting, when she's describing the main character's emotions, or the internal dialogue that the main characters were having. I thought it was well written for this type of book. Like, it wasn't a
Yeah.
hard read. It was like if I was discussing a story with my book bestie and we were just describing a scenario, right? Like, oh my God, I just caught my boyfriend stuffing someone else's turkey. Happy Thanksgiving. That's like something I would hopefully never have to say, but like that's like verbiage that we would say. And so I thought the dialogue and the way the author wrote was like a book bestie over coffee or wine kind of book.
Yes. It used to be my pre-Amber reading. Which was more rom-com-y. Like you could picture it in a movie. I mean, obviously not because of the reverse harem piece of it, but I mean, you could think that. So I was really pulled into the story pretty quickly. And by chapter 2, I was really enjoying it. And by chapter 3, I was kind of fully invested. The main character is sort of cheeky and sarcastic, really reminds me of you a little bit. She was a marketing professional, which of course I loved, although there was no marketing in this pretty much the whole book. But she's hilarious and she's relatable, snarky. Her humor and wit really kept me entertained through the whole book.
Yes.
The whole concept of the store Wrap It Up, the wrapping company, was so clever and steamy. Great analogy for the book,
Yes.
truly. And there was a number of analogies to sex through Christmas throughout the book, which was kind of fun. The humor blended perfectly with the sort of playful and flirty sort of vibe of the story, making it fun and also steamy.
Mhm.
And the plot was really predictable, but it really didn't take away from the enjoyment of reading it, if that makes sense. Because sometimes you just want like lighthearted, entertaining romance that delivers exactly what it promises. And this book is that read. Like, If you were expecting sort of a dark romance or a fantasy or something like
No.
that, this book would literally not be for you. But like Amber and I, we say this all the time in our podcasts, we like these little books to go in between the heavy reading that we do to be able to kind of break things up. And that it was exactly perfect
Yeah,
for
it's a
that.
palate cleanser. That's what we call
There you
them.
go.
I would agree. I would say, yes, the plot was very predictable, right? You could see where it was going. So much that and I cannot believe I'm sharing this, but I skipped read some pages because I felt like it was too much fluff and
It was like toward the end, it was almost taking too long
yeah, and I was like,
almost.
I know
Yeah.
what's happening.
Yeah.
Like, I felt like some of the wording was not needed. And I read this. I actually got this as a blind book. Was it blind date with a book? So it was something that was given on Etsy. I got it wrapped. I had all these stickers with it and highlighters, and that's why we chose this.
Very
I don't
cool.
think this is a book that I would have stumbled upon on my own, but when I got it, it was right before Christmas when I received it, and I reached out to Jen and I was like, I remember you were like, I need something easy. I need something fun.
I need
You're
easy.
like, I don't
Yes.
want to dive deep into fantasy. I just want an easy.
There's a lot of family stuff going on. I want something easy to
I
read.
was like, oh, I
Yes.
just got the perfect book. So that is why it was chosen. And I liked it. I liked everything. I liked what it was for. I liked the description. I read this as a paperback, and so that's harder for me to like really write down the quotes that I loved. And there were some sayings that I enjoyed, like catching your boyfriend stuffing someone else's turkey just made me laugh.
That was like the first
Yes.
page, right?
And
Like
so
that got me right into
there
the
was
book.
some little sayings that I loved that made me chuckle because I'm like, oh, I would say that. But I didn't really have a lot of quotes that really sometimes you read a quote and you're just like, oh, it just guts you. It just tugs at those heartstrings. I didn't really have any of those. I had more of like the male main characters is talking about one of their employees who's very kind of rigid and uptight, but he goes on to these tangents and he makes a comment saying like Gary's tangents could make Alice's trip to Wonderland seem like a straight path. I chuckled because I thought that was funny.
That is creative
Yes,
writing. That is
but
really, really
it's
good.
not like a quote that like that sucker
No.
punches you, right? Or like tugs at the heartstrings.
Yeah.
And I didn't have those. I think there was like maybe one or two.
And we love I going back and listening to some of our podcasts, we love the sexy ones. Like
Yes,
those are the quotes that we like to like do. And while it was spicy,
it wasn't sexy.
there wasn't like conversation in the spice, if that
Yeah,
makes
and
sense. Like it didn't feel, and that's what I
yes,
like.
and I
So
thought
that might be what
I thought that's where we were gonna go because, like, in one of the earlier
that's what I
chapters, one of the male characters, his name is Levi, like we talked about. He's like, "Did I pick out a coat that matched my eyes?" Yes. Well, yes, I did.
for her.
Yes, for her. He's
Yes.
like, the sudden possessiveness I felt for this woman was unmatched, and I cleared my throat as I backed away before I did something like spin her around and claim her as mine. And so I highlight that because he's like,
I wanted more of
yeah,
that.
I highlighted it and I was like, this is where we're headed, people. Yes. And then no.
I have a couple more too, but yeah,
Yeah.
we didn't have as I normally, you guys, I have like 50 annotations for books that I
I
read.
did.
This one, I think I had 6, and I only brought 3 to talk about. So that kind of
Well,
tells
I said
you
my two.
that it wasn't, yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I think,
Do you want me to say do you
yeah,
want me
you
to
can
say
see
mine,
that.
or do you want to talk about the
Well,
irks?
I think the irks kind of go with what like our quotes, right? As well. I mean,
Hmm.
there was not a lot of that. And maybe it's just because like that's what we
That
love.
pressure.
Yeah, that
Yes.
tension and that
Yes.
the tension, the sexual banter. There was banter, but it was like
Mm.
quirky, funny banter, which is like my everyday. So it just seemed like it happened so quickly. The guys just flipping around, and I know it's a short book, but when there's not that sexual tension and then it just happens so quickly.
Yes.
It was like this weird fated mates vibe.
Kind of a letdown
Yeah.
at the end. Like, I don't even remember specifically the end or even the epilogue. Like, I don't remember those, and I always remember those. So for me, it was good, great, good, great. It got to all of this sex, and it wasn't as great as I thought,
Yeah.
if that makes sense. Like, if you got me both, like the first 40%, I would have given it a higher rating,
Mm-hmm.
but I have to rate the book as a whole,
Yes, I
right?
agree. I felt
Yeah,
like,
and that's
and the
hard.
other thing was like all these guys who are like best friends, kind of practically brothers, just all seemed happy to share despite never doing it before. And they were like, oh, it just feels right. I'm like, wait, what is happening?
Yeah, it was, yes. I am with you on that
It just
100%.
didn't feel
And,
like it didn't feel seamless. It felt like there was a disconnect to me.
and I think part of that had to do with that, like the nickname. In my opinion, for
Nickname
me,
was
sometimes like really good nicknames, when they say it, you kind of go, "Ooh," right? And we had none of that because the nickname wasn't good, and it was a little cheesy and a little predictable, but it was a nice quick
it
read.
was.
I don't hate it.
I don't hate it. And yeah, that goes with my rating. So, and we could talk about that. But how about you share one of the quotes that you did
Yeah.
love? Um,
Yep.
yeah.
All right, I have three. One is, welcome to Wrap It Up. How can I help you make your holidays magical today? Her enthusiasm was almost aggressive, like she snorted candy canes before her shift. The entire space looked like Martha Stewart and Pottery Barn had a baby and then bedazzled it.
See,
That was good.
that's what I loved about the book. So,
Yes.
and it's not like I hated the book. I didn't hate this book. I just didn't like,
Wanted more.
yeah, I wanted more sexual tension. I wanted more banter in a less cheesy way. I don't know how to, a less,
Yeah.
I don't know, but
Yeah.
I loved, that's the writing I loved in this book.
It's almost like it was a different author once the sex happened.
Something.
Do you know what I'm saying? Like, because I personally, and I think you too, we like playful, snarky bedroom stuff, right? Like, so when it didn't extend to that, it was a little bit of a
It was
letdown.
a letdown.
But great writing. Like, I don't want to, I'm not dissing the
No,
author.
I loved
You
the
know what I
writing.
mean?
I loved the
Yeah.
descriptions, and that's why I said I love the descriptions. I love the how she gave it with the setting because you could totally see it, and it's like how I would describe something to you, right? Or you to me.
Yes, I literally thought of you so much in this book. Like, this was yeah.
So
So another one is, the gesture drew my attention to her mouth, and I was transfixed by the way her teeth worried at the soft pink flesh. The urge to reach out to brush my thumb across that lower lip and ease the tension there was almost overwhelming. I forced my hands to stay at my sides, even as every instinct screamed at me to close what little distance remained between us. That,
yeah,
leading up to sex, was awesome. I just wanted it extended.
yes, and I think that's where we got frustrated because you could see the obsession, you could see the possessiveness, and then it just kind of fizzled.
Yes. So the last one is one of her impression. She said Max stood at the stove wearing only low
Mm.
slung sweatpants, which we love. And then in parentheses, because it has to go a little step further, this is what reminded me of Amber, gray ones, of course.
Yes.
His back, a canvas of intricate tattoos that disappeared temptingly beneath his waistband. I'd seen attractive men before, but this was art, living, breathing, bacon cooking art. I was
Baking,
like,
cooking, art.
yes.
Yes. And that is my
So
Max. Thank you, Max.
that is
Mm.
complete, right? It's the tension, it's the sexual tension, it's the appreciation for that human being, but I didn't feel like any of that extended into the bedroom, and that was, I'm more disappointed now having talked about it with you.
And well, it's because I think sometimes you're like, oh, okay, it's a great book, blah, 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 and you don't know what's missing. So once you start talking about it and you realize, like, oh, this is what I had the same feelings. This is exactly what I was feeling. I loved how she described things. I loved her writing. And I loved the tension that was leading up. But then I don't know when it was in the book, but it just kind of fell flat. And
Turned
yeah,
off.
and the one thing I did like about this book is that, and it's something that you can always sense is coming, right? It's like with any great story or movie, there's always going to be like that third act obstacle, a conflict or something. And there was no, usually it's a breakup. Like they, for whatever reason, they make it.
Miscommunication almost always.
It's so annoying. Communication. It's not in this book, so
we,
don't.
we hate that, by the
Yeah,
way. We hate it.
between that and amnesia just like freaking pisses me off. So there was no third act breakup in this book, and so I was very grateful for that.
So I just want you guys to know that listen to the podcast or watch it on YouTube. These were the conversations that we would have after every book over Voxer. And because we're not having them, we've decided to have less of them unless we're having a hard time getting through a book, but we're trying to have less of them because we want you. I love hearing what Amber had to say about this book because I didn't know it. Do you know what I mean? So it's kind of more interesting, I'm assuming, for you guys. So it's sad because I don't have my book bestie to talk about after the book because I want to try to save it for the
I think the only
for the
time
podcast.
we talk about it is like if we're having a hard time, one of us is having a hard time getting to the book and we're like, this is a do not finish for me. I can't get into it. Can we shelve it for another time or whatever? So that's happened recently. And my husband's like, there's a lot of books that y'all have DNF together.
But that's only been like November, December. We have never DNF'd prior to that, I don't think.
No. And I was like, I think it's because like the amount that we read, I was like, it's going to happen sooner or later. And we'll get back into our little flow where we're not doing that. But now we also have expectations and what we like and what we don't like. So I think it's changing.
And we're not willing to finish a book if it's hard. We read so many books that we don't have time to read a hard book. And if a book is a 1 or a 2, you will not hear about them on the podcast because we're not going to finish those. I mean, we're just not. We have very little time.
Life's too short for bad stories.
Yes. And in case for those of you who did not know prior to this podcast, DNF is did not finish. So yeah. So what did you rate for spice?
I rate this a 3 on the reverse harem spice level, which is making me cringe how drastic my spice-o-meter has changed due to the books that we have been reading. So that's I was reading this and I was like, oh.
I did a 3.5 or like originally in my notes, but that was because I'm always trying to think about the person that's like just a romance reader and like what they would think. But it is definitely a 3, and I would even consider a 2 for what we've read with Omegaverse. Yes.
And so what would you say your rating for this one would be?
Is a 3. And I will be honest, if the writing wasn't good and I wasn't pulled in with the snarkiness and that like the female character as a whole, it would have been a 2, I think.
Perfect. Mine was, I rated this book a solid 3. It was fine. It was just as it was advertised, but I wasn't going to shout it from the rooftops to read this one. However, if you're looking for some holiday spice with humor and good cheer and some Christmas spirit, this may just be the book you're craving. Like, do I plan on reading it next year during the holidays? No. But I'm glad I read it. No. I'm glad I got it as a blind date book. I thought it was a really cute holiday book, but I'm glad I read it.
And we will read another book by this author because I really enjoyed the writing. So I would be open to reading another book probably.
I loved how she described things. It made me chuckle.
Oh, and named things, how she named things like the wrap it up. Like that's so perfect for that book.
The fact, the female main character also had a lot of puns throughout the whole book, and she just couldn't stop her culture. And I was like, yep, Say it again. Say another.
I'm like, I just picture Amber wearing some of those puns as a
Oh my gosh.
t-shirt, like legit.
I do have one on that says something about a Bunsen burner, or like it's a Bunsen burner honey
The
shirt.
fact that yours are about like
They're
science and
science.
math crack me up.
Well, I'm a scientist at
I
heart, but
know.
anyway,
I love it.
that is what we have for you today, with wrapped up by the Three Scrooges, which is done by Layla Hartley. Layla Hartley, this book was a good, quick holiday read. I loved it. I loved your descriptions of things, but I needed more spicy tension. I needed more.
Thanks for tuning in, babes. If you loved hanging out with us today, don't forget to check in the show notes for all of the juicy details and links.
You can also join our chat for exclusive updates and behind the scene goodies, which is at Morally Grey Babe on Instagram. And of course, just follow us for more spicy reads, hot takes, and unfiltered fun. So until next time, stay morally gray.
Bye.